On August 18th, 1989, it started as an ordinary day at the Arkansas Valley Correctional Facility in Ordway, Colorado. Guards followed their usual routines. Prisoners roamed the yard, and the high fences seemed impenetrable. But in just a matter of minutes, chaos erupted in the most unexpected way. A helicopter descended into the prison yard, carrying two women who were about to pull off one of the most daring prison breaks in history. How did two women orchestrate such an audacious escape? What drove them to risk everything for their incarcerated husbands? And how did it all unravel so quickly? This is the incredible true story of Rebecca Brown and Patricia Gonzales, the women who defied the odds, the law, and even common sense, all in the name of love. Will they be hailed as heroes for their audacity, or face the grim consequences for their decisions? Rebecca Brown and Patricia Gonzales were not criminals. They weren't career outlaws or masterminds of deception, but they were deeply in love with two men who found themselves locked behind bars, Ralph Brown and Freddie Gonzales. Ralph Brown of Millburn, New York, was serving time for sexual assault, theft, and criminal impersonation. Freddie Gonzales, originally from Brownsville, Texas, was serving 4 years in prison for armed robbery. Both men had years left before they were eligible for parole. Their wives, however, couldn't bear the thought of waiting. They were determined to free the men they loved, no matter the cost. It wasn't just about love. It was also about loyalty, about proving that nothing, not even prison walls, could separate them from their husbands. And so, they came up with a plan. Bold, dangerous, and almost impossible to believe. It all began on a Friday morning when a Bell Jet Ranger helicopter landed at the Arkansas Valley Correctional Facility near Ordway, Colorado. The time was 9:15 a.m., and the medium-security prison, surrounded by tall chain-link fences and sharp razor wire, became the scene of an extraordinary escape. The helicopter, which was registered to a Denver oil company, had been rented at Centennial Airport in Denver by a woman using the name Julie Quinn. She told the rental company that she needed the helicopter to take aerial photos of land near La Junta, but her true mission was far more daring. Behind this plan were two women, Rebecca Brown and Patricia Gonzales, who had secretly organized a dangerous prison break. They rented the helicopter under the guise of being interested in real estate, but the real objective was to break two inmates out of the facility. The helicopter pilot, Tim Graves, was a 30-year-old who had just returned from fighting forest fires in California. He met the women at the La Junta airport, where they introduced themselves as Rebecca, a real estate agent, and Patricia, her client. Everything seemed normal at first, even though the women appeared a little nervous. However, the situation quickly took a terrifying turn. As a helicopter flew over the Arkansas Valley Correctional Facility, the two women pulled out guns, one with a 9mm pistol and the other with a .25 caliber handgun. They aimed them at Tim Graves, with one gun pointed at his chest and the other near his ear. The younger woman, shaking with fear, demanded that he land the helicopter, threatening to harm his wife if he didn't comply. The helicopter landed in the prison yard, and within moments, the two inmates sprinted toward it, hopping aboard in a flash. The helicopter quickly took off, flying straight out of the prison and out of sight of the guard. In a move that seemed almost impossible, two desperate men had been airlifted out thanks to the women who loved them. Once airborne again, the helicopter's weight increased as the two fugitives boarded, making the flight much more dangerous. The helicopter flew for about 35 miles before the escapees insisted on landing near an old farmhouse outside Pumpkin Center. Once they touched down, the inmates shoved Graves into a shed, tied him up, and gagged him before leaving him on the floor. Meanwhile, back at the prison, guards were in confusion. They had seen the helicopter land but didn't know what was happening. Some were ready to shoot, thinking it was a news crew, but the warden had given clear orders not to fire, saving Graves' life in the process. The women behind the escape were Rebecca and Patricia, wives of the two fugitives. Rebecca, 26, had met Ralph while he was incarcerated. Their whirlwind romance led her to sell her gold jewelry to fund the escape. She bought guns, radios, and everything necessary to pull off the daring plan. Patricia, 41, was married to Freddie. She had lung cancer and struggled with whether to help with the escape. Her son didn't approve and tried to convince her to wait for Freddie's parole, but eventually Patricia joined Rebecca in the risky plan. Rebecca was the mastermind of the operation, convincing Patricia to go through with it. Their goal? to flee the U.S., likely through Canada, and head to a country with no extradition treaty, possibly Rio de Janeiro. After the helicopter landed at the farmhouse, Graves managed to free himself using a pocket knife. 2 ranch hands had seen the helicopter land and called the sheriff, who quickly came to the rescue. However, authorities weren't sure whether the pilot was involved in the escape, and they questioned him for hours. Eventually, Graves shared a key detail. The escapees had driven off in a yellow Ryder rental truck. The police set up roadblocks on major highways, determined to catch the fugitives. But the escapees cleverly avoided the main roads and took small rural routes, traveling north and east. Rebecca had packed the Ryder truck with fried chicken, double-stuffed Oreos, clothes, liquor, cigarettes, condoms, and bedding. Everything they would need for their journey. Despite the best efforts of law enforcement, the truck remained out of sight. Officers stopped every Ryder truck they came across, but none contained the fugitives. Meanwhile, the 4 escapees continued their trip, believing they had successfully pulled off the perfect escape. Nearly 400 miles away in Arapahoe, Nebraska, a service station owner noticed something strange. A man was filling up a moving van, looking around nervously. A woman sat in the driver's seat and another woman rushed into the restroom before quickly leaving. The scene didn't sit right with the owner, but when a customer joked about whether the Ryder truck could be the one the police were looking for, it caught his attention. The customer explained the situation. There had been a prison escape, and the owner, realizing what was happening, called the sheriff, setting off a new lead in the case. About 30 miles away in Holdridge, Nebraska, a lone police officer overheard a police radio update about the fugitive truck. Though unsure of what he was hearing, just then a Ryder truck drove by on a cross street. The officer contacted a Nebraska State Patrol officer nearby, and together they made a plan. Rather than stopping the truck right away, they decided to let it pass through town before trying to stop it on the outskirts. But things took a wild turn when the fugitives spotted a sheriff's car arriving in the area and decided to change their course, heading straight into downtown Holdridge. This move triggered a chaotic situation. In the blink of an eye, 8 police cars from different agencies surrounded the truck, blocking every escape route. One state patrol officer got out of his car and crouched behind it, but the fugitives fired at him, shooting a dozen rounds in his direction. Miraculously, none of the bullets hit. The truck nearly crashing into a Holdridge police sergeant's car. A bullet struck the hood and another hit the windshield, lodging into the dashboard. The officer quickly jumped out of his car and fired back. What followed was a wild, dangerous chase through the streets of Holdridge. Bullets flew everywhere, at houses, cars, and anything in their path. The police chief, driving his personal truck, got close enough to take 3 shots at the truck's windshield. Inside, Freddie Gonzales was knocked off balance from the impact. His wife, Patricia, panicked, thinking he'd been shot. She screamed, but Freddie told Rebecca, the driver, to stop. And she did right away. Later, Ralph Brown admitted they stopped because they ran out of bullets. The chase had lasted just 9 minutes, and then it was over. The 4 fugitives climbed out of the truck and surrendered. They were finally trapped, caught in a moment of desperation. Later, Patricia revealed a key detail. They had been caught because she had desperately needed to use the bathroom. They hadn't planned to stop, but her husband Freddie insisted, and that was when they were seen. Authorities were baffled by the choice of the yellow Ryder truck as their getaway vehicle. An FBI agent remarked that with all the careful planning that had gone into the escape, they hadn't thought about the little things, like bathroom breaks or refueling. They'd even made sure to buy Oreos and condoms, but they hadn't planned for something so simple. It was a wild, high-stakes game of cat and mouse, and it all came crashing down because of something ordinary as a bathroom break. The consequences for their actions were severe. Freddie Gonzales was handed an additional 24 years in prison, but was paroled after serving 20 years in 2009. Patricia received a 20-year sentence and was released after 13 years in 2002. Ralph Brown was sentenced to 30 to 50 years, and as far as anyone knows, he is still behind bars. Rebecca Brown, who received a 28-year sentence, served 12 years and was paroled in 2001. She and Ralph divorced while in prison, and Rebecca later remarried, completely turning her life around. Both Rebecca and Patricia faced serious charges, including aiding and abetting an escape, weapons violations, and kidnapping. Meanwhile, Ralph and Freddie, both already convicted felons, lost their parole opportunities and saw their sentences extended. They also faced additional charges in Colorado and at the federal level. What began as an act of love and defiance ended in failure, and the consequences of their reckless decisions would stay with them for years to come. The real question remained: why did the two women risk everything for men they barely knew? Rebecca gave a simple explanation. She was blinded by love. She admitted she just wanted to be with her husband, and that's what led her to make decisions that she would regret. She had grown up moving around as an army brat, watching her mother always stand by her father. She thought that's how marriages worked. And you give it 100%. Patricia expressed similar feelings, admitting that she loved Freddie enough to die for him. The thought of being separated from him terrified her. But as time passed, Rebecca realized the truth. In prison, she reflected on how manipulated she had been. "I was a doormat," she said. She had been lonely before meeting Ralph, working a dull job washing dishes, and he had used that to his advantage. He knew how to work people, she said. She couldn't believe the person she had been. "It was a mistake I should have seen an ocean away," she added. Ralph, however, saw it all differently. In an interview, he referred to the escape as a love story, clearly unbothered by the consequences of their actions. Despite the love they thought they had, it couldn't protect them from the law. In the end, what started as a dream of freedom had turned into a nightmare. In the end, their story stands as a testament to the lengths people will go for those they love, and a chilling reminder of how quickly things can spiral out of control. Was it a grand act of love? Or was it reckless madness? Perhaps it was both. One thing is certain: Rebecca Brown and Patricia Gonzales will forever be known as the women who took partners in crime to a whole new level. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe to Breakout Bank for more videos.